Greetings, everybody. This is TimeRider. Welcome to Wee Little Cars 2020, which is not as ominous as it sounds. As some of you know, I'm approaching 1 year on YouTube, and in that time, I have learned a great deal. In 2020, I hope to expand my understanding of this die-cast crap, perhaps learn some new skills, and continue to develop the best way for me to publish my work. And I hope to work with George and Paul to make our Three Blind Mice efforts meaningful through charity auctions and inclusion within the diecast community. This winter, I hope to remodel my bench. Right now, I operate off of 2 old desks, and there is a lot of wasted space. And if I ever want to add a permanent paint booth, and a zinc plating setup, say, and perhaps even a small countertop drill press, I need to better use my space. So hey, I'm in the market for red lines. Lastly, from now until Christmas, all of my auctions will be benefiting Toys for Tots. My hope is to make 2020 a better year than 2019, and I thought 2019 was pretty good. On that note, meet the 69B Hatra shovel. Introduced by Lesney in 1965 and manufactured until 1968, according to the Falkensteiner Variation Guide. Sometimes it's yellow, sometimes it's orange, sometimes it's got yellow plastic wheels, sometimes it's got orange plastic wheels. What I can tell you unequivocally is that if you want to know anything about the actual piece of equipment, not the toy, you better speak German or bookmark Google Translate. I'm going to restore this thing, or at least try to, so stick around. The wheels on this actually were holding on pretty good, which is unusual for Matchbox. Usually, by the time they get to this age, they're practically falling off of the wheels. This one did pretty good, though. And then I've gone to drilling out that post before I take it apart, because there's a nice deep hole in the middle of the rolled over portion of it that acts as a drill guide. You know, Hatra was a strongly fortified city in the capital of a small kingdom of Araba, which is in Iraq. It was located between the Roman and Persian empires. It flourished in the 2nd century. It was destroyed and deserted in the 3rd century. There's some impressive ruins still. Now, whether that has anything to do with this German piece of equipment, I honestly couldn't tell you. But if you Google Hatra, the Arab city is the first thing to come up. The thing was held together by 2 rolled over posts, and one of the rolled over posts was actually connected to the swing arm. So it literally went through the 2 other pieces of the casting. Or I guess 3 pieces, because it actually screws into the bottom of the pivot for the swing arm. It's a nicely done casting. It looks really good, and it's got a fair amount of detail in it. You can get it apart, and you can see there's basically, not counting wheels, there's 4 pieces. And I do want it to go back together pretty easily. So you know me, I grind off them posts and then I do a little test fitting to make sure I can get it back together. This is actually, hey, Primordial Ooze. I'll throw that in there. I'll throw that in there. I need better tweezers. This I'm not going to throw in there. And this I'm not going to throw in there. The Hatra 125 swing loader was built between 1962 and 1966. I love this part. Aircraft stripper. So let's clean this casting up. I got a lot of painting to do. The 125 was designed specifically for military use. Ironically, painting it yellow probably wasn't totally accurate. And here I gotta, pick out some excess paint. Using picks and safety pins and anything I have. Matchbox produced the toy from 1965 until 1968. This looks good enough that I can drill out this little swing arm pivot, and now there's my Anderson oiler from Transport Graphics, your vehicle wrap specialist. Anyway, so I can drill this out and tap it, and rather than trying to use epoxy or something. The SL125, which this is a representative of, if I understand it correctly, was specifically designed for the needs of the military. Back with my Anderson oiler. I'm not getting paid by Transport Graphics. Anderson, I won't identify him any more than that, is a friend and business associate for many, many years. Hey, there's my button screw. Because I gotta put it back together sometime. Every time I find anything about the military use for this, they list it as an FAG and later an FUG, which I understand the German military glossary is some kind of a designation for a ground unit. This is how I get inside these things when I have to deal with this, is I use my pick and a little bit of steel wool, and I kind of wad up the steel wool and stick it on the end of the pick, and then that way I can get into the... I can't get my fingers in there, but I want to get into those corners and try to clean them up a little bit. So that's how I do it. And we're going to paint this with Duplicolor white. The military version of this actually had a canvas roof over the cab, and then a big old tire on top of the engine cowling that was on a 360-degree hydraulic mount, if I understand it correctly. So you could swivel and put it anywhere you want. My research on this was very hard because there's not a lot of information on it, but as I understand it, Hatra was a company at one point in time, but I sometimes wonder if since the company was actually started back in the 1800s as like a lock-making company and a couple other things, it seems like a lot of the information about the company is lost, and I have to wonder if World War II didn't have something to do with that, because they were producing equipment for the military for actually quite a long time. So I'm guessing that they made stuff for the Wehrmacht as well as the Bundeswehr. This driver's cab was designed with space for 2 people. That way the swing loader could be in continuous use. This yellow paint, it's yellow with a little bit of red, and it's like Lesney Happy Yellow, and whether you're painting a taxi or a front end loader, if it's yellow, it's probably this shade of yellow. Lesney Happy Yellow. And this was a challenge to paint just because you got to get at it from so many different angles. And there's an inside to that and an outside to that, and it just goes on and on. I like the color though. But yeah, it was a challenging job just because of how many sides it has. And there's also 4 pieces to it. And as always, you know, I start with a tack coat and then I layer it up. I'm going to assume when these were made for the Bundeswehr, though, they were painted dark green, and I've seen pictures of them painted that color. One thing about these too, all the implements and accessories like guns and camouflage netting were on the device. So as a result, you could use this independent of other vehicles at any time. Maybe that's why they needed 2 guys too. And you could also get, for the front end of it, you could get a shovel, you could get forks for, you know, lifting and such, and you could get a crane hook. So you could use it, for example, to pull an engine out of a tank in the field. It's a really neat piece of equipment. And I finish everything off with some X35 clear because I'm trying to get that period shine. And now I'm going to go back to where I started. Now, I can tell you right now, the biggest challenges to this were that doggone pivot, where it attaches, because that's just a friction fit. It looks like what they did was they put that shovel in there and then hammered down 2 very short little posts to roll it over. So I was really faced with either, you know, just drilling all the way across and adding like a screw or something to hold it on. And you can see there's a crack there on one of the pivot points. I tried to fix that a couple of times with super glue and whatnot, but the problem is anything I do to fix it makes the hole smaller, which makes it almost impossible to get the shovel back in. But anyway, now that I'm done havering on about this, let's take a look at where I finally wound up. And I have to apologize for this because under normal circumstances, I wouldn't accept that joint that you're looking at right there. But every time, I did it a couple times, and every time I tried to put that post through the opening, it re-cracked the pivot point and chipped paint off of it. So both of these pivot points have a little bit of paint damage, and there just isn't anything that I can do about that. But at any rate, the number 69B Matchbox Hatra tractor shovel. And this was done because of something one of my subscribers said to me. So never hesitate to tell me what you think, as long as you're nice about it. Going to be an episode of The Bench after this, so stick around if you like that kind of thing. This is TimeRider, and I'll leave the light on for you. Hey, thanks for hanging around for this edition of The Bench. I'm going to start off here with a little bit of a product review for a CV glue called Starbond, and I know a lot of people use it, and I'll tell you what, it is a great product in absolutely the worst container that it could possibly be in. And the reason that I say that is it's so thin that this bottle, for some reason, I seem to get the doggone stuff everywhere. So I might as well keep some acetone around whenever I use this, because I'm going to need it. And then kind of a follow-up on my Paint It Pink castings. The auctions are done, and I got $112.50 for the pink Cadillac to a wonderful gentleman who's actually in Thailand, but he's got me shipping it to Canada. And then the Batmobile seemed to do the best. It went for $121, and that went to a die-cast collector in Georgia. So a very successful auction. I hope to do it again next year. So anyway, thanks everybody who bid, and that's what happened with them. And then I have a subscriber who sent me this Ford Taurus. Well, actually, it's a Mercury Sable, but the subscriber wants me to make it into a Ford Taurus, which should be fairly easy to do, and then paint it to match the full-size vehicle that they own. And yeah, that's a little soccer ball that I made because this looks like a job for a soccer mom. And those that follow my community page know that I've also kind of been working on this 1933 Plymouth made by Matchbox. It came as a police car or sheriff's car or something, and I was going to do something else with it, and I decided to do this. That's Spectraflame. I polished the hell out of it. Spectraflame root beer. And I'm just going to make a nice little street rod out of it. So look for that hopefully this weekend. And then last but certainly not least, I did put up an auction yesterday of these 3 lovely lorries. And you can find that on eBay. I'll include a link in the description. The proceeds from this, as well as everything I auction between now and Christmas, will go to Toys for Tots. Gotta love them Marines. Anyway, that's about it for me today. Thanks for watching. Thumb up, thumb down. Don't really care. And if you want to leave a comment, please do so. Be respectful. This is TimeRider. Have a great rest of your week.